take a look at it, make sure it looks right to you. With that, run the data quality report. If something looks wrong, dig into it. This is kind of what you've done historically with the AHAR submissions and the HIC-PIT, and now you've done it for 2 years for the system performance measures. So the other big thing to think about is whether or not you're going to resubmit FY16. If not, you just hit no to resubmit during the process. We'll go over that, and you can keep moving. But if you want to, that's good. We certainly encourage you to do that if you feel your data wasn't good or had some errors. We will not always have this option available to COCs. We did it to replace last year your 15 data. We're doing it this year to replace your 16 data. I don't know if we'll do it for your 17 data. We'll have that discussion next year. But I would encourage you to do the best you can to make sure the data is accurate when you submit it, and don't count on us reopening because, again, that's not guaranteed from year to year, and at some point we will stop opening it for resubmission. We generally do not let you retroactively change data. We get this question a lot with the HIC and PIT counts. Because it's tied to national reporting, it's tied to the competition where there's funding and scoring. So if the data isn't right, we usually can't let you change it because it has so many other implications. So again, for 16, you can resubmit your 16 data this year, but that's not going to be guaranteed every year, so please verify your data when you submit it. All right, and with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Tracy and Julia.
Thanks, William. This is Julia Brown from APP, and I'm going to pick it up from here and really get into the really nitty-gritty detail of how you actually go ahead and submit your data into the HDX. As William said, this is really the nuts and bolts side of things, and there are lots of resources if you want just sort of more general information about how the system PMs work and what their intent is. Today we're really going to focus on the mechanics of entering it into the HDX. So once you have all the HMIS reports that William mentioned and you've got your login and you're confident that you can get into the HDX, you're going to go to the HDX, which is HUD-HDX.info, and log in. And there's 2 ways to access the System Performance Measures module. The SysPM module is labeled here, and they're highlighted here in red. You can either go up to the tab on the top, or on the dashboard you can hit that View SPM label, and that will take you into the SPM screen. So to begin the process for FY17, regardless of whether or not you want to resubmit data, you're going to click on the New Report button in the top left corner of the screen there, again highlighted in red. And then you're going to be faced with this choice. As William said, HUD's letting you guys resubmit last year's data. And really, you know, last year we got a lot of questions about why a COC might choose to resubmit data. And by and large, if you're asking that question, you're probably not the COC that's interested in resubmitting data. If everything went fine for you, your vendor programmed the report, you produced the report, you submitted the report on time, you're probably not who this is targeted for. Some folks had, you know, issues where the report wasn't quite ready yet in time to submit it on time, or they were convinced there were programming errors, but they couldn't work it out in time with their vendor. Those folks who struggle, this is who this option is available for. Totally optional. If you're happy with what you submitted, then just leave it alone. If you do want to submit your report again, then you can go ahead and do so. And the way you do so is, so once you click that New Report button, you're going to be brought to this screen, and the screen asks you if you want to resubmit. If you do want to resubmit, click yes. If you don't want to resubmit, click no. Hopefully this is pretty intuitive. There are also some instructions on the screen. The trick is that you absolutely, if you do want to resubmit FY 2016 data, you have to do that before you submit your 2017 data. So you can't do your 2017 one first and then change your mind and decide you want to do to resubmit your FY 2016 data. So think about this before you go into the HDX. and make a decision up front. If you, if you decide no, that you don't want to resubmit your data, and then you're halfway through and you realize you've made a terrible error and you do, in fact, want to resubmit your data, there are back-end solutions to that problem. Just submit an AAQ and we'll help walk you through it. Just secret info for you guys on the phone, if you just throw away, if you use the little trash icon next to the report that you'd already started, it will take you back to where new report asks you this question again, and you can start all over again. But we can help you on the back end as well if you mess that up. So if you decide that, yes, you do want to resubmit 2016 data, that's what you're going to be doing first. You have to submit a completely new data. You have to a data set. You have to completely replace everything you put in, because basically what is going to be written for your 2016 data is the submission. So everything you submit is what will be considered. If you leave a field blank, then it would be considered blank. It won't just carry over what you submitted the first time. So you can either resubmit your 2016 data by manually typing it into the fields that appear on each of the screens. The instructions are basically the same for the resubmission versus the FY 2017 submission. The only real difference is that your screens, when you're resubmitting, will show you both what you submitted in FY 2016, and then it will give you the option for the revised 2016 data to type in next to it, just so you can see and make sure that you're, comparing to what you submitted incorrectly last year and that you're typing in the correct information. Also, for some folks, only one of their measures was messed up, so you might just want to retype the same thing for most of your measures. This just gives you an easy way to do that. So I'm not going to walk you through every single screen in the 2016 resubmission, since it's very similar to what you're going to be doing in the current year, but I did just want to show you that, that screenshot. And I also want to kind of remind you about the data quality tab if you're resubmitting data. So last year, that was a new tab. So again, if you're resubmitting FY 2016 data, you're going to need to completely populate this tab again for all years of the look back. So that's 4 years of data for 5 different project type combinations. So if this was something that went wrong for you last year, you may need to rerun all of those reports. But if you were comfortable with what you submitted last year and you actually just wanted to fix something else on one of the other measures, you may want to go to your original FY 2016 submission on the reports page and kind of take a look at the what you submitted last time, and even print it out if you want, so you have it available to retype. We couldn't fit all of that content onto one screen if we'd showed you what you typed last year and what you, and given you the blank screen. The screen would have just gone on forever. So, so you'll have to go back and look at it if that's something you want to re-enter here. Regardless of whether you want to re-enter it or type in new information, you need to actually type into these cells that are shown in the red box. The data up above, and we'll talk a little bit more about the data quality tab, but the data up above are not manually alterable. They're pulled straight over from the HIC modules in the HDX. Okay, so once you've finished your FY 2016 resubmission, take care of any errors and warnings, which we'll talk about a little bit later in regards to the FY 2017 submission, then you'll be ready to click Submit on the report status page, which again, we'll walk you through in the 2017 piece in a second. And after you submit the report, then you would go back to the Reports tab and you click New Report, that same blue button again, and you'll be directly taken to Measure 1 for the FY 2017 report year. So again, there are these 2 ways to enter data. You can type it in manually, which we'll talk through in great detail, or if your vendor offers the functionality, you can upload the SysPM data in the CSV format. There's a specific CSV output file, and there are specifications for that on the in the HDX Data Exchange page, so that it's just all the results from your SysTM report in a CSV. So if you have that option, you would download that file from your HMIS, and then you navigate to the Import tab on the gray toolbar, so it's all the way there on the right. You click Select CSV File, you go and navigate through your computer and find the file that, that you downloaded, and click Upload File. If that works, you'll get a green box up here that says Validated. You can save it to the HDX. You can preview your data down here in the preview window. You can see what will populate. And then you need to choose whether to process the file as the 2017 base data or 2016 revised data. So this is this process happens regardless of this. It's the exact same process for both the resubmission and the 2017 submission. You just need to tell the system how to process the file, and then click Save to HDX. If the file can't be imported because there's something wrong with the structure of the file, it wasn't exactly the way the specifications indicated it should be, you'll get this error, this red box that says that it can't submit, and the data validation window will explain to you what the problem is with the results, and that's something you can take back to your vendor, or you can manually fix in the CSV file if you feel comfortable with that, or you can, you know, just proceed to the manual data entry and just type the responses in. So let's talk through the manual data entry piece. We're going to walk through each tab of the module. If you've uploaded data, you're still going to want to do this because you're going to want to make sure that, you know, everything ended up in the right spot, the results look correct to you, and you'll want to see if you have any errors as you go through. So the module includes 7 measure links up at the top, and the data quality tab as well. I'm not going to spend too much time in each of these tabs because really what you're doing is typing information from your HMIS output into these screens. So generally it's pretty self-explanatory. They're pretty similar to the way they were last year. Again, pretty similar to the way they were before. So we're kind of getting to the point where this is becoming pretty routine. But if you want a really detailed, in-depth discussion about each of the submission steps, you can look at the 2015 webinar where we spent even more time really kind of dwelling on each of these measures. So you can click from tab to tab as you complete each measure, or in each measure there's a button at the bottom of the screen that says save and go to next measure, and that's how you can go from measure to measure. So this is measure 1, you know, type in the boxes that have manual entry. Anything that was submitted in 2016 or resubmitted in 2016 will appear here in the grayed out boxes. The differences between what the 2016 result was and the 2017 result is really kind of like what the measure is. It's really about the change between the 2 years, and those differences will be automatically calculated by the HDX. In measure 1, there are 2 screens. So the first one that we looked at, this one is about the change in the average and median length of time people are homeless in ES and SH. And then the second row is ES, SH, and TH. So this is their actual time enrolled in those projects. The second version of the measure is the actual time enrolled plus the time that is incorporated from people's responses to data element 3.917. So those data that are self-reported when asked how long people have been literally homeless. This measure was changed this year. So last year was the first year that it was used. And then this year, HUD incorporated some additional data from folks who have reported 3.917 data in response to questions in a permanent housing enrollment. That data wasn't included originally, but now it is. So HUD is really aware that your numbers might look different. And if you feel like adding a note into the system, we'll talk to you about how to add a note. But that may be something you want to note if that feels more comfortable for you. But HUD is already really aware that there's probably going to be some artificial difference between the 2 years that's created by the change in the construction of the measure. This is measure 2. Again, type things in. One thing I noticed last year is that I got quite a few situations where a community, like, for example, didn't have any street outreach projects in their HMIS. So their HMIS export just showed the rows ES, TH, SH, and PH, and then a totals row. So people were typing the results from their first row in the first row of this screen, even though that would have been their ES results. So just make sure that you're double checking which row you're entering, that it matches the label here. We put in some error checks now where it's like if your total is exactly half of your PH row, then we'll flag that for you, and we'll make sure to keep an eye out for that well before submission, the submission this time, but that was something we didn't realize was going to be a problem, so it caused a little bit of a scramble last year. So do make sure you're typing stuff into the correct row here. And we added a little warning to that effect. Measure 3 has 2 parts. The PIT count part auto-populates from the data submitted in the HDX in the PIT module. One thing that caused a little confusion last year is that, and we tried to make sure that the labeling was clear, but do understand that these are the PIT counts from the year that is associated with the SPMs. So the fiscal year that is being covered by the FY 2017 SPMs includes the PIT count from January of 2017. It's especially confusing because you are just now thinking, you're just now thinking about submitting your 2018 PIT count. So it's confusing because people are saying, oh, that's not the number I just typed in. But, this is last year's PIT count. Hopefully that'll be a little bit eased because some of you haven't even entered your PIT count yet. So that'll be logical that it wouldn't populate yet. The second part of this measure is the annual counts from the HMIS, and this one you'll need to enter into the system. Measure 4 has 6 tables. There are 3 tables for system stayers and 3 tables that are very similar for system leavers. The universe for the first 3 tables should all be the same. And then we look at the folks with increased earned income versus those with non-employment income, and then those who have one or both of those types of income. The second set of tables is the same thing, but for adult system leavers. Do be aware that this is sort of similar to an APR measure, but it's not exactly the same as that APR measure. It's also calculated at the system level rather than at the project level. So, it's not necessarily going to be the case that everything's going to sort of add up from your APRs. If you have concerns, though, about the numbers you're seeing, digging into the APRs of relevant projects might be able to sort of point you to a project that might be causing your overall results to skew here. Measure 5 is counts of folks who have first-time homelessness within the HMIS. Measure 6, again, this one, like last year and the year before, is not applicable for this fiscal year, so you'll just skip that screen. The last measure, measure 7, is about placements and retention. So placements from street outreach into more beneficial circumstances, and then placements into permanent housing destinations from quite a few different project types. And then finally, sort of change in the PH exits or retention of PH. Looking at that and whether those placement rates or those placement and retention rates are staying the same year to year, increasing or decreasing year to year. Again, this one is similar to some APR measures, but it's calculated slightly differently. Again, it's at the system level, not the project level. But the same thing is true that I said about income. You know, if you really feel like there's something wrong with your numbers, looking at the APRs can be a place to help find some outliers, folks who are having really maybe some low performing projects. There's also been a slight programming change to measures 7B1 and 7B2 to incorporate the concept of the move-in date, which was something that was incorporated for project types, for permanent housing project types beyond just rapid rehousing. So there has been a slight change in measurement there, and again, HUD is aware that that might create some kind of slight change to the results, although it shouldn't have as big a potential impact as the change to measure 1. So those are all the measures. The last tab that you need to complete then is the data quality tab in terms of doing some actual data entry into the HDX. The reason for collecting this data quality information, and last year it was a lot of information. Going forward, it's a little bit of information each year. The point to collecting this is, you know, if you're looking at changes from year to year, it's hard to know whether they're due to actual real changes in performance or whether it's because, you know, you suddenly got an increase in project participation or bed coverage or data quality. So really kind of this tab is a starting point for helping HUD to understand that context as they read and interpret the results that you're submitting. The tab collects 3 data points: a bed coverage rate, a total number of total persons served, and a destination error rate by these 5 project type groupings that are provided. And these project type groupings, just for the record, in the data quality tab, exclude DV beds. That was also a question that came up quite a bit, is why folks' numbers looked a little different from their HIC numbers, because those DV beds are excluded. The bed coverage calculates automatically, so all you really need to do is manually enter 3 data points from your data quality report for each of these 5 project types. So you need to enter the total number served, the total leavers, and the total number with a missing, don't know, or refused destination response. This is the screen that you enter. So if you entered all of your data quality points last year, the first 3 columns will be populated with what you submitted last year, and so you'll only need to populate this 4th column. The reason we have 4 years is because each of the measures kind of looks at a different chunk of time, but all told, when you're looking across the measures, 4 years of data are being looked at. So, you know, one of the measure about employment, for example, only looks at this year's data, but the measure about first-time homelessness looks at the people who are served this year, but then looks back across their records of 2-3 years ago. So one thing I'll note, this destination error rate will calculate the other thing I'll note is that even if you import the rest of your SPM results from your CSV, you will need to still manually enter these fields. These fields are not included in your CSV at this point, so you need to just type these in. The source for these are 3 data points on your HMIS data quality report. There's a template that was provided in the HMIS glossary for vendors about what that report should look like. Your report might look slightly different than this, but there should be a report available, and you should be able to identify these 3 data points. If you're having trouble with that, feel free to submit an AAQ. This is one where, because you have to run it 5 times for each of these project type groupings, you'll want to do this earlier rather than later. So try it now, for example, and make sure that this is something you can do. The data quality report looks across a lot of data. It takes a long time to run. So just make sure that you're well in advance of getting this done, not leaving it till the last minute. Okay, so once you enter all your data, or really actually as you're entering your data, you'll start to notice some potential warnings, some potential errors. We're going to talk about how to address those and clean those up. So like all of the other modules in the HDX, there are errors and warnings to help you identify and address inconsistencies in the data that you're submitting for your SPMs. Once you save the data on each page, the warnings will appear as red font and then a little yellow pop-up window if you hover over it. You can show or hide the error messages where I've indicated in a red square up on top of the screen. So you can display them all, or if they're really getting overwhelming, you can hide them all. Validation errors will prevent you from submitting your data. So these are things that are limited to logical impossibilities. So if you report that more people have achieved a measure than there are in the universe for that measure, you can't submit that data. These are pretty common sense error checks. They probably would have been already addressed in a review of your system performance measures report that came out of your HMIS. This is sort of like a last check if you, for some reason, didn't notice that as you were working with your vendor and your HMIS. There are some other things that are not errors, but are instead warnings. And in those cases, you would be able to submit your data, but they're things that are just, that don't make sense for us. And so in those cases, you could leave a little note indicating why there was that warning. You can leave a note in any field, even if there's not a warning. You just click the little square up, sort of hover over the cell, and a little square will appear in the top left corner. You can click on that and type a note about anything you want to. HUD does retain these notes on file, although no one's going to change data as a result of it. So sort of be aware of the limits of leaving a note, and don't feel any obligation to leave a note. Just make sure that you click that Save Notes button at the bottom. Don't just close out of it or it will disappear. You can also, when you go to the reporting tab, the reporting status tab, which is the last tab that allows you to submit the data, you can see all of your errors and warnings here. You can click the little plus button to drop your list of warnings down. You can click the plus or minus button to hide them. If you have errors or warnings, they'll display here. You can click the Fix This button, and it will take you back to that specific error or warning where it falls within the module and fix it there. You can also print a report of all of your errors and all of your warnings. If you want to go talk to your vendor or ask some questions of your vendor, ask some questions on an AAQ, it might be easier to have it printed out there. So once you take care of entering the data, entering your data quality, solving any of your errors and reports to be ready to actually submit the report. You'll go to the reporting status tab, and you will be able to click the blue submit data button. If the submit data button is not blue, if it's grayed out, there are two possible reasons for that. One is that you still have errors that are not letting you submit, which you will need to solve, as we just discussed. The other is that you are not the person with submit rights. As William said at the beginning of this conversation, you have to be the right person to have the submit rights in order to submit those data. So it may be that someone else needs to log in and submit for you, or you may need to be added to the list of people who can submit. But you will need if you want to be added to the list, you'll need to get your COC collaborative applicant to give you those submit rights, or find the person who's the COC primary who can help you with those submit rights. You can also submit an AAQ if you have issues along those lines. Don't forget to click that submit data button by the deadline. After you submit the data, you'll want to go ahead and prepare a summary report so that you can keep that for your files. Just confirm, we've got the records on the HDX side of when you clicked submit. But, for application purposes, you'll want to make sure that you print out your own records. That's something you can do back on the reporting status page. There's a reports, the SysPM report, then when you click either the PDF or the Excel, pops out the actual results that you typed in. And that's something that you'll be able to attach to your application if HUD asks for it again this year, which is something they did last year. You can always access this. You don't need to do it, right at that exact moment, but it's, good practice to get into just in case, so you're not scrambling for your application. So just a quick summary. This follows the structure of the guide. You're going to choose whether or not to resubmit last year's data. You're going to enter the data from your 2017 System PM report into the HDX, either manually or by import. You're going to complete the data quality tab. Whether you entered your other data manually or by import, you're going to need to complete this tab manually. You're going to review and address all of your warnings and errors. You're going to submit the report, and then you're going to generate your report of the submitted data. It's pretty straightforward, and the guidance document should be able to help you with anything that you're stuck on. But again, you're welcome to ask questions or submit questions to the AAQ page. We've got quite a bit of time left for questions, so I'm happy to take them now. And William also stayed on the line, and he is here to answer questions also.
All right, well, I have a list here for you, so I'll just start from the top. And the first question is, our COC codes are not uniform in HMIS. For example, MA-503, MA-503 without the dash, capital M, small a, 503. They've tried to get the vendor to fix it, but it hasn't happened yet. Will this be something we need to correct in advance to submit their 2017 PM upload?
So that's something you'll need to talk to your vendor about, how they have programmed sort of accommodating the COC code. If your projects all operate within one COC, you're probably fine. If these are projects that are operating across multiple COCs and you have multiple projects that are operating across multiple COCs and you've got this inconsistency, I would definitely talk to your vendor about how they're planning to accommodate that situation in running your SPM.
Okay, so the next question is, does the data quality section need to be manually entered or can it be imported as well?
So right now the CSV specifications that are for this report are, don't include the data quality. We prepared them back in the first year when it was, when the data quality piece wasn't included. And the CSV is, the data quality piece is sort of like already a report that exists. So we didn't want to add a lot of burden to vendors to create those additional columns in the CSV. So at this point, you do have to run the report for the individual project groupings and then manually type the responses into that page.
Okay. So here's a good question. If we choose to resubmit the fiscal year 2016 data, should version 5.1 or 6.1 of the SysPM report be used?
That is a great question. I love the person who asked that question. It gives me a headache to think about, though. William, this is something, I think the answer is that they should use the version that was available during the year that is in question. But if your vendor disabled the old version and you only have the one version, then I guess you would have to enter the new version if you're planning on rerunning it.
Yep, that is right.
Okay.
So kind of a waffly response, but hopefully you'll get something, you get what you need out of it. If this is a situation, if this is like a concern for you, you can submit an AAQ too, and we can like talk about your specific situation if you need to.
Okay, so the next question is, with the programming specifications having changed since the last submission, for example, pre-PH time in Measure 1B, this changed our numbers. Is it recommended that we resubmit the 16 data so that the 16-17 comparison would be based on the same programming specs?
Right, so this is kind of the same question as the previous question, but from a different perspective. It's like, is that a reason to resubmit? I don't know. William, do you have a feeling about that?
You don't have to resubmit. I actually think it's always good to have as close to apples as possible, and the new specs will be closer to what you're going to be comparing from year to year. But that's not required, right? We're not going to make you go back and do it. I just think it's a little more clean for your comparison from year to year.
Okay, so the next question is it preferred to submit the HIC and PIT data before submitting the system performance data?
Oh, it really does not matter because the PIT and HIC data are both coming from the January 2017 submissions. So in terms of actually like seeing data in the system, it does not matter. The deadline for the HIC and PIT is a month earlier than the SPM deadline. So from a logistical purpose, you know, from practical work, if you're the same person doing all of those things, you might want to time it out to make sure you hit that PIT and HIC deadline first. But in terms of viewing data in the SPM, in the SysPM module, it doesn't matter because we're pulling from a different source than the 2018 HIC and PIT submission.
Right. Okay, should the COC code used for the system performance measures be based off data element 3.16 client location or the 2.3 continuum of care code project descriptor data elements?
It should be the project descriptor data elements. The one that's client level is really for use in situations where you know, within a, okay, let me think about that answer for a second. It depends on how your vendor has structured how clients are assigned to a COC. The answer is it depends. So everyone's favorite answer. So I would say if you are in a situation where you have lots of projects that are operating across multiple COCs and you have a situation where you are assigning a client COC code at the client level, the clients included should be those who are associated with the COC near the same numbers. So it should be clients and projects that are associated with the COC code for which the submission is being prepared. And if that doesn't answer your question, I do want you to submit an AAQ because I want to get into that a little bit more with you.
Okay, thanks, Julia. So the next question is really a two-part question. It's an initial question, then with the clarification. So the first part of the question is there anywhere to see all possible validation errors and validation warnings?
Oh, sure. We could actually just post that. I mean, all of them are really illogical. I mean, they're really complete logical errors. But yes, we could post that. We have a spreadsheet of them. I don't know, William, are you comfortable with us posting like a PDF version of that?
Yep.
On that page?
You have no need to hide that stuff. That is great to publish.
Maybe what we'll do actually, since we're just about, well, we just 508'd the data entry guidance, but we could post it on the same page with that, just as a separate document, but on the same sort of resource page with that.
Yeah, I want a separate document, but yes, we should post them on the same page.
Yep, cool.
Okay, and you actually understood their question because their clarification was, is there any way, anywhere to see all possible validation and valid, not just those that are problems. So it's really a two-part answer. If you're just looking for a list of the errors and warnings in your data, you can print that and see it from the data reporting page. But this would be a better option if you wanted to see all possible validation errors and validation warnings.
Yes, okay, right, yes, both of those things are true. You can see all of yours in the reporting status tab, and then we'll post a list of all of the possible ones if you want to just like look through your data on your own before submitting it. But there aren't that many, I will add, and they are all pretty much impossible things. So they should be pretty easy to look through, pretty obvious things, yeah.
Okay, so the next question is there just one SPM submission per fiscal year, or can you resubmit until the deadline date?
There's only one, but you can throw away what you have already put in there. I think once you hit submit, you can't throw it away anymore. It like goes over, but if you submit an AAQ, we can help you. I don't pull the results for William until after the date has passed, so we can help you out there.
Right, so if you submit and you want to unsubmit, just submit a question through the AAQ and we can unsubmit your data for you so you can go in and make changes.
Yeah, but if you feel like you want to make a bunch of changes, like then just don't hit submit and you can throw it away as often as you want and start a new one until you feel ready. So, you know, don't submit an AAQ asking for that over and over again, but you can if you need to.
Right. I'm not seeing any other questions come in, so if you have a burning question, please type it in.
I will say last year, I mean, this went surprisingly smoothly. We had just those few concerns that I raised in this presentation about, you know, things that people misinterpreted or were typing in the wrong rows. I think we've you know, kind of gotten into a good pattern with things. So hopefully it'll be smooth and easy again this year.
Okay, seeing no more questions. If you think of something afterwards, please submit a question through the HUD Exchange. This will be posted, so you can download it if you want to see it again on the HUD Exchange. And I think
And the guidebook will be up in the next couple of days, so that's also a great resource. All right. Well, thank you guys all for listening patiently to us, and I hope you all have great luck downloading and submitting your SPM this year.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.